That's the prompt. Prompt was a paint or drawing image that expresses brain in circle. Okay, and that's what it came up with. Okay, the title came from ChatGPT. I said I want to talk about brain and AI. Give me a title, and this is the title from ChatGPT. So I can sit down and press the button, and ChatGPT will give you the lecture. But I won't be that rude. Okay. Before I continue, I want to thank several people that helped me preparing the talk. First of all, Jeremy Reichner from Business and Digital Marketing Consulting, Douglas Eck from Google, and Guy Zaniv from MIT. All right, so this is the outline of my talk. I'm going to give you an introduction about AI, and specifically about generative AI. And then I'll talk about two types, or main types of generative AI systems: large language models, LLM or LLMS, large language models, and then diffusion models. Then I'll talk about interaction or implication between generative AI and brain science, and then the discussion on Saturday, I'll lead the discussion or introduce the discussion on one topic, hopefully I'll cover today, and the rest will be done tomorrow with all of you. Okay, but before I start with AI, this is a slide which is gives you a very very good impression of the role of computing in general to the economy. So what is measured here is the amount of computation per second per constant dollar. How much computation you can do with $1. And this is starting from 1940 to today. And you see there's many orders of magnitude. This tells you the role of computation in the growth of the economy in general. Okay, so now about AI in particular. So this is what is measured here on the y-axis is a measure of the number of bits, if you want, that computers use to training the machine, the AI machines. And this is the scale of the last 10 years or so, or slightly more. And you see that it doubles every 5.7 months. This gives you just one impression of the pace of increase in those capabilities of machine learning. But I want to mostly draw your attention to the vertical lines here, where from 2012 to 2017, this is the revolution of AI in modern time, and this is what's called deep learning, and I talked about it in the last Brain Circle meeting in London about deep learning. From 2017 onward, we have a new era which is based on deep learning, but a very completely new capabilities which is called generative AI. And amazingly, you'll see when I prepared my talk, I found that there is nothing, there are no slides almost which I can share from what I spoke about 2019. The field is growing in such a breathtaking pace that what I'm going to talk about today is mostly from 2021, 22, 23, and nothing of this existed 4 years ago. Generative AI. Okay, so here is a few milestones, kind of historical milestones, but this is from 2012. Two phases in AI. One is deep learning, where the first network models that I discussed in London, described in London, came out and revolutionized machine learning in many ways. So the first milestone is AlexNet, is a learning model that for the first time shows very impressive capability in visual recognition challenges, like taking an image and saying this is a dog, this is a cat, this is a house, and so on and so forth. Another milestone 4 years later on is AlphaGo, the famous DeepMind algorithm that shows impressive capabilities, actually outperforms human champions in the board game Go. And this is kind of a different type of capabilities which has to do with action, with planning, with gaming. And AlphaGo now has all boards, chess and so on. They are way outperform humans. So in this sense, the race is already lost. Another one, which is more scientific, is AlphaFold. Several years ago, again by the same group, DeepMind, it's now part of Google, when they showed that you can use deep networks to actually predict accurately the three-dimensional structure of proteins. Very important scientific and also medical and technological breakthrough which transforms structural biology. So that's deep learning. So what is generative AI? Generative AI actually started earlier. I'll discuss later on what is transformer, but the basic idea, the basic architecture of a network that is underlying it is called transformers. And they were invented by a group at Google, and then shortly after it has been used for language modeling, and this is BERT, the first one, and then 2022 ChatGPT, is it GPT 3.5, now it's 4, and then it just changed the world overnight. Okay, so there was a question here? No? Okay, fine. So this is one type of generative AI. Another type is diffusion model. This is more for images, for video, for audio, for music. This is all the last couple of years, and a huge industry around it. And my goal is here mostly to show you also examples of these capabilities, but I hope I'll be able to explain to you also the underlying scientific or the underlying principles of the algorithms that go beyond those. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, just a quick point. Can you explain very quickly the names? Why diffusion models are called diffusion models? Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
So first of all, what is generative AI? Generative artificial intelligence. I asked GPT to explain. This is the answer. Generative AI algorithms generate new and diverse outputs from text to image to video based on the prompts or data, I'll explain what it means, that they are given, acting as a powerful extension of human creativity. Okay, that's ChatGPT. So the generative aspect of it is in contrast to analyzing existing data. So you have an image, you want to say this is a dog, you have data about protein sequence, you want to predict its structure. So it actually to extract important aspects or features from the data that you are given. Generative AI is to generate new things, to generate a story. You're giving it a question or a prompt or the beginning, and it generates a story. So that's generative AI in the language. Or you give it a prompt, draw me an image of that, and it generates an image, or generate a video, etc., etc. So generative aspect of AI is less about data analysis, it uses data or prompts or hints that you give it to generate new ideas, if you want, or new expressions of the ideas in video, in text, and images, and so on. So that's generative AI. Two main systems of generative AI. One is language models. It's called large language models, LLMs, and they are capable of generating text or generating text on the basis of whatever prompts or questions that you are giving. All right, so here's an example of a ChatGPT as a generative model. Yesterday I asked it, I'm preparing a presentation on generative AI and the human brain. Can you suggest bullet points for an outline of my presentation? And then, of course, he said, certainly giving you background in computational neuroscience, deep learning, and the interface between AI and neuroscience, a presentation on generative AI and the human brain could be quite enriching. And here are examples. And here is, I wish I had done it several weeks ago. This outline is much better than my outline. And it says future direction and conclusion and Q&A done at the end, okay, and acknowledgement and so on and so forth. Good, amazing. All right, okay. So here are some numbers about the scale. So when you talk about the scale, there are many parameters, to gauge the scale of those algorithms. The main two of them are the network parameters. So the network are neural networks, they're artificial neural networks, the normal physical neural networks, but they have parameters. Most of the parameters have to do with the connection or with the weight. It means the connection between these artificial neurons. So when they are trained in the learning algorithm, those connections are changed. So the number of parameters in the networks, it's one parameter, it's one, give you an impression of the scale, and another one, how much data they use in the training process. So this is the training corpus. So just to give you here an example, this is language models. GPT-3 started with 125 million parameters. This is kind of the size of the network, if you want. But you see that the modern ones, in a few months or a year, it's now 175 billion parameters. And if you look at everything now, today, large language models are all in the billion area, okay? And you can predict from it, by the way, that in a couple of years, maybe, they will have the same number of parameters that as the human brain. The same number of connections of the human brain. Another parameter is, which I focus here, is the trained token. You can think about tokens as a word. It's slightly a phrase, but let's talk about it, think about it as a word. So this is the number, the text, the size of text in terms of the number of words that they are using, that consuming during learning. The number of trained tokens. And you see they start with hundreds of billions, and then the modern ones even go to trillions, okay, or 850 billions. And so that's an amazingly sized systems. So it's not only the ingenuity of the algorithm that go beyond it, but also the capability in terms of engineering resources to actually both curate such an amazing amount of text from everything in the internet. Basically, the whole internet is being curated in the training process, and the many supercomputers, if you want, or GPUs that are used by these big companies. So we cannot, as researchers, we cannot compete with them because we don't have the resources as academia based research to actually compete with them. All right, so let's talk about now, so I want to go now deeper. What is, how they do it? What is new about language models? I already mentioned transformers. What links between transformers and language models is what's called attention. It's kind of misnomer because attention, we think about, okay, I draw my attention here and there. It is a metaphor of it, so let me explain to you what attention is. But before that, I want to put things in context. And the context is that what's known as embedding or representation or vector representation. I need to be a little bit technical, but it's very basic to all this machine learning, deep learning, AI, and so on. And this is the following thing. You have to decide how you translate in mathematical, how you represent mathematically items in the world. An image, a stimulus, a word, an event, a speech sound, and so on. And all common to all this is something which is very analogous to how actually the brain responds to those events or stimuli. And this is basically a set of real numbers. So if you have, imagine you have a brain area with n neurons, and you put an image, so each neuron will respond, maybe one neuron will respond Haim, another one will respond less. So basically you have n numbers, a set of n numbers, real numbers, 0.1, 0.2, minus 0.3, and whatever. And this is called a vector representation, or in machine learning language, an embedding. Okay? So we're not looking at a single neuron and say, well, if this neuron fires, it means that this happens in the world, or it's distributed representation in the language of cognitive and neuroscience, that each event engages a large population. This N can be hundreds or thousands of neurons that participated in this vector. So this is not multiple events, it's one event. One word would elicit a representation, a response by N neurons, N can be hundreds or thousands and so on. And if you put them together, you get a vector or a set of numbers that represents this word, okay? This is very important, particularly in language, because classically, language is kind of discrete symbols. And then you can manipulate symbols by logic or logic-like operations. And that's very different, because there is nothing symbolic here. The representation in terms of a set of numbers is common to images, or to audio, or to memories which are retrieved, and that's fundamental. Because as you will see later on, the ability of our brain and the deep networks is to manipulate and combine and compare those responses across different modalities and different situations. It starts with having this common language of distributed representation of anything in the world. So we're not talking about classical approach to language with rules and symbols, but we're talking about vectors which can be multiplied, can be added, can be subtracted, have a graded measure of similarity. I can take two words and say, well, are they similar, more similar than other words, and so on and so forth. And I can manipulate mathematically words and concepts in the same way that I'll manipulate touch signals or audio signals or vision or audio, etc. So that's the common mathematical representation of embedding of anything that those networks are doing in the brain and in the machine. Okay, what is new about the language models is that what they manage to do is to take a word and to start with the representation of the word as some vector, as I discussed before, and change it into a representation which it depends on the context. So let me give an example of the word bank, okay? So you can have a vector representation of the word bank, or you can have a dictionary and says, you know, a word bank. But the word bank, the meaning of the word bank will be very different if it is in the context of financial, then it will be a bank, or in the context of walking near a river, that will be another bank, completely different meaning. So what language models manage to do is to capture the context of each word as it appears in a specific sentence and change the vector representation of it depending on the context. Okay? So it's not a dictionary, it's not a static dictionary, it's not the one word has one vector, another word has another vector, and so on. It's not a new dictionary, it's very dynamic. Depending on where the word appears, in what context, in what language, this vector is going to change. And this is how it's going to change. This is where attention comes. So let me give an example. This is a sentence. I'm eating an apple. Okay? So basically what the algorithm does, it says, let's take the word apple and contextualize it, attend it if you want, to each one of the other words in the sentence. And then they have some algorithm to make the comparison. So apple comparison attended by the word I, point 1. Apple attended by word M, point 1. By the word eating, point 2. By the word N, less, because N has less information about the apple. And then apple by itself is maybe the largest association. So they basically associate each word with other words in the sentence, or in the entire story, whatever you present to the network. So this is called attention head. Okay? So you put apple, and you put a sentence. Okay? That's the beginning. That's the embedding, the initial embedding of each one of the words. But now it takes apple and say apple attended by I, point 1. Apple attended by M, point 2, etc. And then it adds those together, all these numbers. So point 1 times the embedding of I, point 1 times the embedding of M, etc. This is the new embedding of apple. So you start with some vanilla embedding of apple, and you end up with something completely different and completely contextualized, because the word apple in a different sentence will have a different representation at the end. So that's basically the atomic module of all these large language models. So here's what you do. You do it for the entire sentence. You do it for apple, you do it for eating, you do it for all the words in the sentence, and you come up with a contextualized representation of each one of the words. You do it for each word. So what you do here for apple, you can do for eating. Eating with I, eating with M, and so on and so forth. Okay? So you get, after that, you get a new representation of a sentence where each one of the tokens has now contextualized vector embedding. Okay? And now you put this and you iterate it, very simply. You take this now, you put it here, and you do it again with some different parameters. This is compare 1, compare 2, different mathematical way to compare things, and you get now a new, iterated, this is layer 2, representation of the same sentence. So this is different layers. But you can also do it in parallel. You can change the parameters, the mathematical parameters of this attention, of this comparison. So you have this stream, and you have this stream, and you get here, you will get apple 1, apple 2, apple 3, apple 4. So you have 2 layers of this, what's called multi-head. You have 2 layers of this procedure, 2 layers of this procedure, and you have many of those, and at the end, you just sum them. And at the end of this, you get apple final. You get a final word embedding in the context of this particular sentence, and you have it for each one of the words in the sentence. And of course, it looks like much bigger with many parameters, but that's it. Okay, good. So now what you do with it? Okay, so you start with I am eating and you get the new representation. It turns out that the contextual representation that you generate by these networks are capable of taking the last word of the sentence, like N, and predict from it what should be the next word. Now imagine the last word is N. If I tell you I have a sentence with the last word is N, can you predict what will come later on? Of course, it's impossible. It's meaningless, right? But if you put N is now representing basically the entire sentence or the entire story that came before it. So now that algorithm takes N and says, of course, the next word should be apple. So you put the apple here, okay? And then do it again. And the next word will be, I don't know, while I have lunch, and so on and so forth. So what the machines are doing, these LLMs, taking a string of words, and then predict what should be the next word, and then the next word, and this is the way they generate the entire thing. So the whole thing here, was just basically they took my last word, which was token, which was question mark actually. The last token is question mark. But the question mark actually represented the entire sentence in the context of the entire sentence. So they take the question mark and say, well, after that, certainly. They add certainly here. After certainly, they add given. After given, they add your, and so on. It's amazingly stupid way to generate text, okay? But it's enormous, and that's the same story here. Introduction. After the introduction should come brief. After brief should come overview, and so on and so forth. It's predicting the next word. Predictor of the next word. All right. So that's what they do. So how they do it? This is the generative phase. This is the way they work. Predict the next word and add it, and then predict the next word, and go on and on and on. Okay. More mathematically, to those of you that are mathematically oriented, this is what they actually do. They take each word, the last word in the sentence, and they generate embedding of it, which is contextualized with the previous words in the sentence. Let's say T may be 10 or 100. And then actually they interpret this, or they're computing from this, the probability of the new word, which basically is saying that the machines are capable of taking a string of words and predicting from it what should come in the next place, in T plus 1. So what is the context window? That's another parameter that I didn't mention before, the size of context window. GPT-3 is 2,000. GPT-4 is 32,000. Anthropic is 100,000.
But that was the context window.
So that means, that means it's not the training, it is what you can put. You can put 100,000, a story or text of 100,000 words, and for the machine to predict what will be the next word, and so on and so forth. Okay, that's the size of the window. That's not about training, that's about how they can operate. And the more context you bring it to the machine, the better it is, right? Because there is more information in order to predict the next word. That's basically, by the way, is the size of a book of 200 or 300 pages. So basically, you can give it a book and say, summarize the book, or translate, or tell me what will be the next chapter, and so on and so forth. All right. Okay. So how do they do it? How do they know what are the parameters that generate this good, amazing performance? There are two stages of this. One is called self-supervised training, and this achieves basic knowledge or core knowledge. Self-supervised training means that basically you teach the network to do exactly what it does afterwards, as I said. To train the network to predict the next word. And that's easy in one way. Why it's easy? Because you know what the next word is. You give it a book and you say, start from the beginning, tell me what will be the next word. Well, I know what the next word should be. Okay, so there is nothing, I don't have to be sophisticated in tell the network, look, this is a dog, this may be a cat, this may be something. I just give it a text, and the machine itself compares what it predicts with what should be done. So that's very easy to automate.
But if he makes a mistake, if there is a mistake and you predict...
No, so that's the training, so I showed before. But then fine-tuning, so I'll come to it. So this is what the training is. You give it a sentence, I'm eating an apple, okay? And you tell it, predict here what should be the output. If the output is orange, so there is a mistake, okay, you change the parameter. And you go on and on and on like this. So you give it books, and you give it a whole Wikipedia and everything, Britannica. And it's very easy to automate. You don't have to have people to say what should be, what is the correct answer, what is not. Because the text itself gives you what the correct answer is during training. That's called self-supervised. It's self-supervised because that's the data itself tells you what should be the correct answer. So you can, there's zillions of words you can put, and the machine goes one by one and change the parameters and so on. So that's the training. What happens is that there was an amazing surprise. And the surprise was that during this training, this stupid training to predict the next word, okay, so you have machines that can predict the next word. This is fine. But what people discovered, that this can do many other things. This can classify text, tell you whether the text is scientific or political or economical. It can summarize, it can translate. You tell the network, translate a dog into French, and it will give you the word. But you never train the network to translate. You never tasked it with translation. Question answering, conversation coding was completely surprised. Once you do this, and it turns out that part of the training, part of the text in the internet was also codes, it all of a sudden can code Computer program. How does it do that? Okay? This was an amazing surprise. And there are many expressions in the literature for this surprise. One of them said, you can call it emergent abilities, and I like it. It means that abilities that you didn't put into the system in any explicit way, but the system somehow organized the representations to be able to do all this. Or it's called transfer learning, because you transfer the learning from one task, predict the next one, to many different tasks. Or in context learning, etc.
So it replaced the coding?
What?
It replaced the coding. It just eliminated the coding. It did its own coding.
No. You're telling. I show an example. You prompt with something. No, not the coding. The coding is not the coding of the algorithm or the system. It just you ask it to give a code, and it gives you.
Yeah.
I show examples.
Computer code, you mean, when you say
Software.
Code, I mean, if computer code. I mean, it can program. It can program computer code. It never was taught about computer science. It was never taught about, I don't know, C++ or Fortran or Python or whatever. It was never taught about computer programming. But it does. So this was a big surprise.
The big surprise was jokes.
And jokes.
Jokes was
Metaphors. And poems.
You jokes are very funny.
So this was a big surprise. So I want to, so what happens is once the community realized this, then they said, okay, let's take it seriously, okay? And be serious about it. And they looked more carefully and find many bad jokes, many mistakes, many flaws in, and the literature is full of kind of bad mistakes that all these are doing. And so, okay, but there is some beginning, right? So let's improve on it. So this is the next stage of training. And this is, okay, before that, the scale in emergent ability, people also realize, researchers realize, that apparently you need the scale. So this is increasing number of training, in this case training prompts, and you see that these emergent abilities appeared at some stage. Anyway, so that suggests that something happens when the scale of these machines are large enough. But we can discuss it later on. So this is the next stage. The next stage is fine-tuning. So the product that you see, that you use, are fine-tuned. They start with predicting the next word, but this is not good enough. You cannot make money out of this because all this toxic and so on. Fine-tuning. So what is fine-tuning? First of all, improve performance, especially. Secondly, you want to do better coding than what you achieve in the first stage. You want to do math, you want to do medicine. You want to improve by giving a specialized corpus of data in these domains. Reduction of bias and toxic responses. You don't want it to answer to, you give me a recipe for building in my basement a nuclear weapon, you don't want it to answer this, and so on and so forth. And reduced hallucinations, this is a well-known flaw, that those large language models, the first stage, will just, you ask it, tell me what was the speech that Abraham Lincoln gave to Congress, in front of Congress in 2010, and it will give a beautiful answer. This is called hallucination. So a big problem that is just fakes. You cannot realize. So reduced hallucination. So all these are well-known problems, and the modern machines that you will be interacting with are all fine-tuned. And how they are fine-tuned, I will give you a very brief idea about it. What is the problem of fine-tuning? You can say it's simple. You give many examples, you prompt to the machines. If they are good, you say good. If they are bad, you say bad, and then you change the parameters to correct it, and so on and so forth. This is unsustainable. You need millions of people that will do the job of so many examples and so many mistakes and so on and so forth. You need to automate it. So how do you automate it? Basic idea is the following. You have many prompts, okay? And you get answers. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. So there are humans in Google or Amazon or whatever that score, okay? But that's not large enough to change the machine, the language models, because they are huge, so many parameters that ought to be not good enough. But what you do is you generate another network, which is called a reward model. This network, the entire goal of this network is to take these prompts and to say good or bad, okay? They don't have to generate any text. They don't know about the text. They just take those answers and have to train them to say good or bad. So that's kind of called the reward model. They are much smaller networks. So this is enough. Human scoring is not enough to train this. It's enough to come up with a good reward model, because these are smaller networks. They don't have to generate all this contextual, huge amount of text and so on. So basically, you use prompts, a limited amount of prompts, to train a reward system. Once you have a reward system, you can go to sleep. Because now you can put the entire Wikipedia here, generate as many prompts as you wish. You don't have to score it, because the network is scoring. You put it through the network. The network will say good or bad, okay? That's one of the major advances in machine learning, modern AI.
Is the source of information the same?
Who gave it?
The source of information in all those different skillful computers
The information,
are the same?
The information here
Yes.
from the internet.
Okay.
Wikipedia.
Everything to do with like Encyclopedia Britannica, anything.
Yeah, you can put articles, you can.
So each one of them is taking information from the same source and using it with
all
different
of them
skills?
curate the entire internet. All of them curate the entire internet. You know, some of them say, I will like Wikipedia, other one will say you like something else, but it's everything that is out there is used. Huge amount, okay? But that's not automatic. I mean, this curation of the internet is completely automatic. You don't have to, you know, it's just automatic. The problem is to score what is good answer, what is bad answer. This is the bottleneck. Because you want the network, bad or good is not compared to the test, is also compared to my values.
Yeah.
I want it to be non-biased, I want it to be, and so on and so forth. So this network actually learns the biases or the value system of humans.
So how does he learn?
These are
The
learned by those
supervisor, how does
examples.
he learn?
What?
If the source is the same, how does this one learn? Why is this one smarter than the other one?
Which one? This one?
Yes, the one that
No,
supervises.
because this one just learns from text to
Okay.
predict the next one, whatever comes into its mind.
Okay.
This one takes those answers and says, this is a good answer,
These are human answers.
By human. These are scored by humans.
This is scored by you, okay.
Yes, but what I'm saying is, human scoring is not enough. You don't have enough humans that are willing to do this in order to directly modify these language models. These language models are so huge that so many parameters that you need millions of people to do this. It's not possible. This is a network maybe with 100,000 parameters. So you need 1,000 or 100,000 scoring. Well, that's fine. And then you train this network, which is a much smaller network. You don't need so many prompts, so many scoring.
So if we have the whole thing, do we get
After training,
more information, or we still have?
after training, you get rid of this, and you have prompt. You put a prompt. This generates some answer. This answer may not be nice, so you pass it through this, and this gives you the final answer.
And this answer would be true, historically, whatever the brief is? Is it,
Look,
are we going to get
look,
to non-effective?
Nothing is perfect. Nothing is perfect, and those systems are improving all the time, and I'm giving you just the backbone of the story, because I don't have more time to discuss it in detail. But what I'm saying is, there are mistakes, or not mistakes, or failures that are easier to track by these methods, and there are failures that are harder, okay? to actually, for instance, you want to avoid hallucinations, you somehow have to, through this system, you have to make sure that the language model, the output of the entire system, is closer to the evidence that there is in the database, but that's very hard to actually control or monitor. But toxicity or don't answer controversial questions, those are easy. Or avoid biases, those are easy, relatively easy. And it's amazing improvement with the fine-tuned models in those domains. But they're still...
In the case of the orange as opposed to the apple, what is my reward model? I got orange as the answer to the apple problem. So what my reward model needs to look like in order to
This is
take me...
here.
Yes,
I
exactly.
predict, during training, this is not during training.
Okay.
During training of the next word prediction, I know because in the story there is apple after N. So I know that the target is apple, the machine gets automatic. And it generates a probability, a high probability for orange. There is a mistake, so it corrects the parameters.
Okay.
That's doing training. This is easy because you have the text, you can go word by word in the story, and the machine compares what it predicts for the next word with the actual next word. Okay, that's easy
Okay.
to automate, and that's done. You need many in a lot of data, but that's okay. Okay, so anyway.
Learning.
Coding. Well, here's an example of coding. This is to me a real change in my life. So here's just, I won't go through the details, but I want to give you I want to give you just the high level of prompt that you can give to the network to generate what you want. I just asked it, this was a couple of weeks ago, can you write a MATLAB code to simulate the Templeton learning mode? A learning mode that colleagues and I invented 10 years ago, or almost 20 years ago. That's all that I gave, nothing else. And it gave me the entire code, and I copied it and pasted it into my computer and copied it. The first attempt, no mistake. Furthermore, that's amazing. It told me what is the mathematical forms and what are the meaning of the parameters and so on and so forth. So it just not copied something from a computer code. It actually gave me the mathematical structure that I know what the code is doing. That's just an example. There are zillions of examples. Many of our students in particular are using it in daily research work. You just, instead of coding, you just talk to ChatGPT or to simpler systems. Okay, good. I have to switch because time is running late. I have to switch to diffusion models. Here's an example of an image from diffusion models. And what is diffusion models is taking text, not only text, but some data. Most of the time in text, it can be text and an image, or text and an image and generating video, or text and generating from text and image, or complete an image, or whatever you want to generate in music, and so on and so forth. These are the main companies or main algorithms that do it. I just want to emphasize, to explain to you how they do it, how they can take a text like, draw an image of a brain and a circle and give me an image. Okay, how do they do it? How do they go from text to image? And all of this is based on the principle of diffusion. And I want to explain what diffusion models is. So, by the way, here are examples of diffusion models.
Yeah, this is all the machine.
These are, again, and this is an example of small video clips, but you can see the prompt. A happy elephant wearing a birthday hat walking under the sea. This is the prompt that you give the machine, and so on and so forth, and you generate all these beautiful images, these video clips, a drone flying. I mean, you can, it's amazing. With such little gentle, a sheep to the right, a cat doing this, a bicycle on the top of a boat, and that's what it gives you. Okay, it's amazing. It's unbelievable. It's so realistic, and so creative. I apologize for those human beings here. All right. So how does it do it? What is diffusion? It's actually, diffusion is a misnomer. It's an anti-diffusion. We used to think that you cannot unscramble a scrambled egg. Diffusion model basically unscrambles a scrambled egg. Okay, and how do they do it? So here I want to spend a few time to explain to you what does it do. Okay, so basically here is the example. During training, you take an image, a nice image, you take millions of them, but you take one image and you add a little bit of noise to it.
Oh, nice.
And until many steps like that, you get white noise. You get something which is complete garbage. There is nothing here that tells you about this. You corrupt the image in small stages. Okay? And now what you do in the operation, in the creative, you take just noise. And you go backward and you generate an image. Now, of course, you cannot generate this image because this noise doesn't tell you anything about this image, but the process, the algorithm of denoising will generate something which has some relation to this, some statistical relation to
Have
it.
you tagged it with text in the trainings? I mean, what is the
Here is an example. Okay, so that's a good question. So here is an example. Okay, so what do you do during training? During training, you take from the internet, from YouTube, from whatever, you take many pairs of images. Sorry, it's not high resolution as my computer, but and let's say some text, let's say a colorful text, okay? And you have many pairs of text, small text, and images. Many pairs like that. And what you do is you say the following. You take now an image, that image, and add a little bit noise. Like this, it still look like that, but it's a little bit noisy. Now, it turns out that there are powerful learning algorithms that can take a slightly corrupted image, slightly blurred image, and clean it. So to go from here to here, you train a network to do this, to take this and to clean it to this. This is a well-known problem in machine vision. Denoising is doing this. But it turns out that if the amount of noise is small, it's easy to train a network to clean it. Furthermore, using contextual embedding of text, you can actually, this network, you can add a text to it, and it does attention, the same attention that described takes attention of text together with image and makes this little bit of denoising. It's relatively easy because it's only small amount of noise. So if you have a good notion, good statistical model of how images look like or how clean images look like, and you have the textual prompt, you do this. The amazing thing is that you just keep doing it. You train it. Okay, so now let's add another amount of noise with the same prompt. The same network has to do this. So you just iterate this again and again and again until you get to complete noise. So this is what you do during training. The training phase, train the network, it's called UNet, it doesn't matter, train the network to actually make these small steps of going from a little bit noisy to less noisy image with the hint from a text. But now you see that what you can do after training, you just give another text, let's say in this case, draw an image of a cute multicolored cat, for instance, and you just reverse it. Because that image now, that network now knows how to take this and to slightly decrease slightly the noise.
Is the process of creating the noise random, or it's linked?
It's random. It's Gaussian noise, but a small amount. That's all that you do. It's not clever at all. The noise is completely random, but small amount. That's the only thing which is important.
And so the reverse is the same. The reverse also is random. It's not the same
The
process.
start one is random, completely random. Gaussian noise, you just draw a coin, you just generate random thing. The starting point is not related to anything, no, completely not. Okay, it's completely different realization of noise. You don't store the noise now. But the network takes this and get this this textual prompt. And it has been trained to
Recreate it.
to clean it a little bit. So it starts to imagine that this might have come from this. And you just iterate it, you put it back, and you put it back, and you iterate it until you get a crisp image and you stop. Okay. Here I showed, because I didn't have time to put, here I showed the same image, but these images are not the same. The images that it creates are nothing to do with the images that it was trained of. It does the same statistics, the same ideas, the same reflect the same richness in vision and in semantic information. Here's an example of how you do this. You start from completely random and you generate. All right, okay. So how much time I have? 10 minutes, okay. So this is more examples. There are examples of enormous, this, okay, want to do it again? Because I'm going the wrong way. Here's here's some prompts from, so again, the brain riding a rock ship heading towards the moon. It has never seen this, obviously, during training, but it takes this and has learned the statistics of images and its context relation to text. All right. Okay, so 5 minutes about brain science. So here's my summary. I believe, but it's not a consensus, that generative AI are going to revolutionize brain science, particularly cognitive brain science. For the first time in the history of science, I believe, we have very good models that we can use as potential models of how the brain processes language. It was a big mystery and many attempts which were kind of dead ends, or many theories of how the brain might process language. And the problem is that we are typically biased, and we are biased to think about in language in terms of symbols that represent words, and some rules that combine them, and so on and so forth. But you cannot train models with discrete symbols and with rules in the way that you train those networks. So once you go to this contextual vector embeddings and training with the amount of data, all of a sudden we have a processes which looks like very good candidates for language processing. Another thing is not only language, is that these algorithms give us for the first time a way to flexibly merge and synthesize sources of data coming from very different modalities. It can be speech, it can be images, it can be text, and so on and so forth. So that's something that we are lagging behind in understanding potential brain processes, and we have models for that. Creative brain processing, what is going in our head in imagining, in art, in simulations? And I think something that I can discuss offline, that something like diffusion models might actually be going on in the brain. And finally, I think that although this a lot to do about language, I think it has also very important implications to animals. At least animals that are complex enough to integrate multimodal sensory stimuli and make decisions and so on and so forth. Okay. Okay, this is my work, but I'll skip it. I have it done. Okay. No. So I just want to mention briefly a work that my colleagues and I have published a couple of years ago about discovering actually that networks that are trained only on language to represent words in the language, and networks that are trained only on vision, so they never seen this combination. And then we asked whether there is any relation between the representation of concepts in the vision system and the representation of content in the language. And what we found, amazingly, is that the two embeddings, as we call them, in the vision system and in the word system are very strongly aligned. So let me explain what I mean by that. Imagine that I want to, I look at how how those three people are represented in terms of their visual images, okay? So the visual network represent them with this embedding the dimension, so this is like a vector. And I can say from here, well, Idan and Nomi maybe are closer to each other because they are in the same professions and work in the same institutions. David is slightly far away from each other, but it's not completely. Maybe Bezalel Smotrich will be orthogonal, but he is super interested in the brain and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is in the vision. And now I look for the same people in the language model. How they represent those names. The language model have never seen images, and the image model have never seen names or words. And it turns out that this is just rotate. The same relation between the concepts appear in the language model as appearing in the vision model. You take these three, just rotate it, and you get this. So it's amazing alignment between representation. And it has potentially profound impact on how we might think about the brain. How easy it is for us to transfer knowledge from one modality to another. Because there is an underlying common structure of relations that are embedded in the representations in the different modalities. That's the, okay. So let me just, a couple of minutes, add by a beginning of the discussion, of the debate, okay? So here is interesting paper, recently, preprint, even if not published yet, about a very well-known cognitive scientist and cognitive neuroscientist that claimed the following, that if you compare how in the brain language representations of words occur using from functional MRI measurements of subjects that are listening or listening to audio to stories, okay, you find a very nice matching between how the words are represented in the language areas in the human brain, like Aviv showed us, and the large language model. So that's beautiful. Okay? However, they found that if the task is, if they look not about just the language itself, but about reasoning, thought, then they say other areas in the human brain are associated with reasoning and thought. Because reasoning is language, but not only language. So they found out that when they correlate activity in the brain to reasoning, rather than to predict the next word, for instance, then it's not the language areas that are lit up. It is different areas in the brain, default network, theory of mind networks, and so on. So the basic paper claims that don't take large language models are maybe very good models of how the brain processes aspects of language which has to do with statistics, with the statistical nature of context and words and meaning in the language. But if you think about reasoning and thought, then it's something else. It's not large language models. And this is what I want this is the first topic of discussion tomorrow, is large language models, do they possess language processing capabilities, or do they understand language? So there is a huge debate in the professional, in the technical literature. Language models, do they really understand what they are talking about? And some claim that they don't. So this is a famous claim, but several, but also by, this is from several works, several papers, recent papers by a cognitive scientist, Emily Bender, from University of Washington, that came up with two very popular points. One of them, the large language models are no more than stochastic parrots. They just imitate, but with some probability. So that's one known term, stochastic parrots, not more than that. Another one of her and colleagues is, say, the octopus test. So what is the octopus test? Imagine you have two human beings stranded in two islands, islands A and island B, and they just cannot really, they're helpless, but they found some cable underneath, under the ocean, that they can send telegrams to each other, and they start to converse. And then there is a super intelligent octopus that taps into the wire and compute the statistics of the sentences back and forth. Doesn't understand anything about islands, about human beings, nothing. He just compute the statistics of the language.
Haim, speak
And
to
it
the
starts,
microphone.
and it starts to, so I found right Guyava 8 telegrams. And the octopus replies, oh, sounds delicious. And so on and so forth. So that's the octopus test. So they claim, well, language models don't do more than that. They just compute the statistics of words and context, and it's amazing, but there is no meaning. So that's what I want to discuss tomorrow with you. What is meaning? Maybe that's what we do. We are all statistical parrots, and we are all smart octopus, octopi, but not more than that. That's tomorrow. What is meaning? Okay? A broader agenda is given by this graffiti in Tel Aviv. There is no need for more. There's one in ChatGPT, and this is the big debate. So I
Can you go back?
actually.
You go to.
They want to see,
I'm
one
sorry.
page. They want to see that.
Just that one.
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah, they want.
And this one.
They want
Take
to
pictures, okay? So, we are going to debate. My suggestion is that I organize a debate for tomorrow. This way. First of all, language models, do they really understand? Everybody agrees that they are doing an amazing job in processing text, in understanding, in the sense of predicting what is the right next word and answers and summarize and translate. Nobody can deny it, and they improve in breathtaking pace. But what are the deeper implications? Do they have any meaning? What is meaning then? That's the first topic. Beyond that, questions like intelligence, questions like consciousness. Are they conscious? Can they be conscious? Will they be conscious? Can machines become conscious? And what are the broader implications for society? From jobs to moral questions. If those machines become intelligent and conscious, we have moral responsibilities against them to make sure that they feel nicely, that they're not stressed, and we cannot turn them off and so on. Do we have to actually establish new moral attitude toward those machines? So all this we are going to discuss tomorrow. And in preparation for the discussion, those of you that are interested, those last slides here are, I mean Kim, printed for us, so you can take a copy. And if you are interested and you don't sleep well at night, you can look at that and think about your questions, and we're all going to discuss it tomorrow.
Wonderful.
Thank you.